The wind howled through the gnarled branches of the ancient oaks surrounding the mansion, their limbs stretching like skeletal fingers toward the overcast sky. The air was thick with a heavy silence, interrupted only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the creaking of the dilapidated structure that loomed ahead. Nestled on a forgotten hill, the mansion stood like a ghost from another age, its faded grandeur a testament to the wealth and ambition of those who once called it home. The massive stone facade, adorned with cracked columns and ivy that clung desperately to its walls, whispered stories of a glorious past now buried beneath layers of dust and decay. As dusk settled, shadows danced across the facade, casting eerie shapes that flickered in the dying light. The mansion's grand entrance loomed, its heavy double doors slightly ajar, creaking as if inviting visitors into its somber embrace. Inside, the air was cool and musty, filled with the scent of damp wood and forgotten memories. Dust motes floated lazily in the dim light that filtered through the cracked windows, illuminating the remnants of a life once filled with laughter and opulence. The expansive foyer, with its towering ceilings and intricate woodwork, hinted at the splendor that had flourished here. But now, cobwebs draped over antique chandeliers like shrouds, and the polished marble floors were dulled by layers of dust. A grand staircase spiraled upward, its railings worn smooth by time, beckoning one to explore the darkened corridors that lay beyond. Each step echoed with a hollow resonance, a reminder of the many feet that had traversed this path long ago, now replaced by the silence of neglect. Yet there was an unsettling energy that lingered within these walls, an atmosphere thick with secrets waiting to be uncovered. Whispers of the past seemed to drift through the air, stories of joy and sorrow entwined, mingling with the scent of decay. It was as if the mansion itself held its breath, anticipating the arrival of someone to unlock the mysteries it concealed. The origins of this grand estate were steeped in intrigue. Built in the late 1800s, it was the brainchild of a prominent industrialist whose fortune had been forged in the fires of the nation's burgeoning economy. The mansion, a reflection of his ambition and taste, was designed by a renowned architect, blending elements of Gothic and Victorian styles. Its creation symbolized not just wealth, but the relentless pursuit of power and prestige in an era marked by rapid change and upheaval. But as the stories of the family who inhabited it began to unfold, it became evident that beneath the polished surface lay a tangled web of ambition, betrayal, and tragedy. The mansion, once a vibrant hub of social gatherings and lavish parties, slowly descended into a realm of shadows where unspoken tensions simmered beneath the surface. The laughter that once echoed through its halls faded, replaced by the whispers of secrets and regrets. What had happened to this once magnificent estate? Who were the souls that roamed its halls, and what darkness lingered within its walls? These questions hung in the air like an unfinished melody, beckoning the curious to delve deeper into the mansion's history. The allure of its secrets was palpable, an invitation to uncover the truth that lay hidden in the shadows. As the camera panned away from the entrance, drawing back to capture the mansion's silhouette against the twilight sky, the feeling of mystery deepened. The old house stood resolute, an enduring symbol of a bygone era, but it was clear that something more sinister lurked within. The faintest of sounds, perhaps a whisper or a soft footstep, echoed from within, sending a chill down the spine. In the distance, a storm began to brew, dark clouds gathering ominously overhead. The wind picked up, swirling leaves and debris in a wild dance, as if the earth itself was responding to the encroaching tempest. And just as the first drops of rain began to fall, a flicker of movement caught the eye. Something darted past an upper window, just for a moment. Was it a trick of the light, Or did the mansion truly hold a presence, watching and waiting? With each passing moment, the air grew thicker with anticipation. What lay behind those weathered doors? A forgotten legacy? A hidden truth? Or perhaps even something far more sinister? The mansion seemed to hold its breath, as if daring anyone brave enough to enter and uncover the secrets that lay within its decaying walls. And thus, the story of the mansion began to unfold. Its tale was one of tragedy and triumph, of a family grappling with the weight of their own legacy and the shadows that trailed them relentlessly. With every creak of the floorboards and every flicker of the light, the past whispered its secrets, tempting those who dared to listen. Yet there was no denying the sense of foreboding that hung in the air, a reminder that some stories are not meant to be uncovered. The mansion, with its clashing beauty and haunting presence, was a character unto itself, an enigma wrapped in layers of history, inviting explorers to discover what had been lost, but warning them of the consequences of delving too deep. As the storm broke overhead, thunder rumbling in the distance, the scene shifted. The screen faded to black, leaving the audience hanging on the precipice of discovery, eager to uncover the layers of history that lay ahead. What would they find within the depths of the mansion? Only time would reveal the answers, as the shadows deepened and the winds howled, carrying the secrets of the past into the stormy night. The mansion, a relic of a forgotten era, had been constructed in the late 1800s, a time when ambition fueled progress and wealth was measured in opulence. Its impressive silhouette against the evening sky told tales of grandeur, but also of the relentless pursuit of status that characterized the age. Behind its stone facade lay the fingerprints of a visionary, Charles Whittaker, a titan of industry whose name was once synonymous with prosperity in the realm of steel manufacturing. As the founder of Whittaker Enterprises, his wealth was matched only by his ambition to leave a lasting legacy, which is precisely what led him to build this opulent estate. Whittaker's decision to construct the mansion was not merely a reflection of his affluence. It was a statement, a monument to his achievements, and an invitation to the elite to bask in the glow of his success. The architecture was an eclectic blend of styles, drawing inspiration from the Gothic Revival movement and neoclassical elements, resulting in a structure that seemed to emerge from the pages of a fairy tale. Towering spires reached for the heavens, while arched windows adorned with intricate stained glass depicted scenes of mythical stories, casting colorful patterns onto the grand hall. The mansion's lavish interiors showcased the finest craftsmanship of the time, boasting hand-carved woodwork, marble fireplaces, and an eclectic collection of art that adorned every wall, telling tales of culture and sophistication. The expansive gardens that sprawled around the property were meticulously designed, featuring fountains, rose bushes, and manicured hedges that whispered secrets of the gatherings that once filled the air with laughter and music. This was a sanctuary of wealth, a paradise where the elite could escape the hustle of their lives. Yet, as history often reveals, wealth can serve as a double-edged sword. The era of the mansion's creation was marked by stark contrasts. The glittering surface of affluence often masked the shadows of hardship that lay beneath. The Industrial Revolution had wrought significant change, and with it came societal tensions. The workers who toiled in the factories that filled the landscape struggled to survive, viewing the opulence of the Whittaker mansion as a glaring testament to their own plight. These tensions simmered beneath the surface, an undercurrent of resentment that would eventually entwine itself with the mansion's fate. As the years passed, Whittaker's family grew, with each generation adding to the fabric of the mansion's story. They lived extravagant lives, hosting parties that lasted for days, where the elite rubbed shoulders with politicians, artists, and thinkers. Yet, the mansion was also a crucible for familial tensions, as secrets festered behind closed doors. Whispers of betrayal, jealousy, and ambition echoed through the halls, creating a palpable tension that lingered long after the guests departed. The grand staircase, once a focal point of celebration, began to bear witness to more than just revelry. It became a silent observer to the unraveling of the family's ties. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the property, the mansion's history unfolded like a tapestry, rich with the threads of triumph and tragedy. As night wrapped its velvety arms around the estate, the whispers of the past grew louder, beckoning to anyone who dared to listen. The air was thick with anticipation, as though the mansion itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next chapter of its story to be written. But what lay ahead was shrouded in mystery, a series of events that would alter the course of the Whittaker legacy forever. The hushed tones of the past hinted at a dark secret buried deep within the walls, a secret that had the power to unravel all that had been built. It was in the stillness of night, beneath the watchful gaze of the moon, that the truth would begin to surface, revealing the shadows that haunted the mansion. As echoes of laughter faded into the night, the mansion loomed over the land, an indomitable figure that invited both admiration and fear. Its windows, like watchful eyes, seemed to hold stories of those who had come and gone, as well as the secrets that had taken root in its very foundation. The tales of the Whittaker family were far from over. They lingered in the corners, waiting to be uncovered by those brave enough to explore their legacy. As our journey through the remnants of this storied past continues, we invite you to join us in this exploration. If you're intrigued by the mysteries that lie within these walls, consider subscribing to our channel. Your comments about where you're listening from mean the world to us, helping us connect with you and share these enthralling stories far and wide. The saga of the Whittaker Mansion is only beginning to unravel, and there are many more secrets waiting to be unveiled. The darkness deepened, the wind rustled through the trees, and the mansion stood resolute, a monument to ambition, wealth, and the hidden truths that seemed to whisper through its dilapidated halls. It was a home, a sanctuary, and a silent witness to the lives that had unfolded within its walls. The journey into its depths promised revelations that could change everything. Would these secrets continue to haunt the mansion, or would they finally see the light of day? Only time would tell, as the story of the Whittaker Mansion awaited the next brave soul willing to step into its shadowed chambers. The mansion, a relic of a bygone era, had witnessed both the heights of fortune and the depths of despair. Its walls were imbued with the laughter of children that once echoed through the halls, mingling with the sounds of elegant soirees where the elite gathered in dazzling gowns and sharp suits. Their glimmers reflecting the wealth and power that permeated every inch of the estate. But who were these people that called this grand structure home? What lives were lived within these walls, and what secrets hid behind the layers of paint and plaster? The original owners of the mansion were the Kilgore family, a dynasty that had risen to unimaginable wealth in the late 19th century. The patriarch, Arthur Kilgore, had made his fortune in the booming rail industry, his vision and ambition propelling him to the forefront of a rapidly industrializing America. With the railroads crisscrossing the nation, connecting cities and fostering trade, Kilgore had seized every opportunity to expand his empire. By the time the mansion was completed in 1895, it was not merely a home, it was a symbol of his success and a testament to the affluence that fueled his ambitions. The mansion's architecture was a blend of Victorian opulence and classical motifs, designed by one of the finest architects of the time. It featured soaring ceilings, intricate wood paneling, and lavishly decorated rooms that showcased the family's wealth through art and furnishings imported from Europe. Each room told a story, embellished with ornate details that spoke of taste and sophistication. The drawing room, where the family hosted their guests, boasted a magnificent fireplace, flanked by portraits of ancestors, their eyes eternally watching over the gatherings, as if critiquing the lives of future generations descending from their lineage. The Kilgores were not merely wealthy, they were influential, intertwining their lives with the fabric of society. They mingled with politicians, industrialists, and artists, creating a legacy built on power and ambition. However, behind the gilded facade, tensions simmered. Arthur's relentless pursuit of success often left little room for familial bonds. His wife, Elizabeth, a woman known for her beauty and grace, struggled to maintain a semblance of normalcy within the turmoil of their lives. The couple's 3 children, Vivian, Thomas, and Eleanor, were often left to navigate their own paths, finding solace in the shadows of the mansion that loomed above them. Vivian, the eldest, was a vision of elegance, her every movement deliberate, yet a sense of unease accompanied her every smile. Known for her sharp wit and intelligence, she was often seen as the jewel of society, a position that bore its own weight. As whispers of her beauty traveled through the elite circles, so did the rumors of her secret engagements with suitors who were deemed unsuitable by her father. Thomas, the middle child, was a brooding figure, torn between the expectations of his family and his own ambitions. He found comfort in books and the sprawling grounds of the estate, often retreating to the garden, where he crafted stories that reflected both his dreams and the shadows that loomed over him. Eleanor, the youngest, was still a child when the mansion was completed. Her laughter once filled the halls, but as she grew, the burden of her family's legacy began to weigh heavily on her delicate shoulders. The mansion, with its labyrinthine corridors and hidden chambers, became a sanctuary for secrets. The family's luxurious life masked a growing discontent, and as time wore on, whispers escalated into hushed arguments that echoed through the vast rooms. Elizabeth found herself increasingly isolated, torn between her husband's ambitions and her desire for a close-knit family. Arthur, consumed by his work, began to overlook the emotional needs of his wife and children. The mansion, once a place of joy, transformed into a battleground of unspoken words and hidden resentments. The shadows of the Kilgore family did not just dwell in the confines of the mansion. They seeped into the very air that filled its rooms. The grand staircase, a centerpiece of the foyer, became a symbol of separation, where family members passed each other without acknowledgement, their eyes cast downward as they navigated the turbulent undercurrents of their lives. Servants, once privy to the intimate moments of the family, became the silent witnesses of their decline. Their stories intertwined with the Kilgores as they observed the unraveling of a once unbreakable bond. As the years progressed, the mansion witnessed the family's slow descent into chaos. Business deals turned sour, and the Kilgore fortune began to dwindle. Arthur's relentless ambition, once a driving force, now transformed into a desperate grasp for control. Elizabeth's health began to deteriorate, stricken by the stress of her husband's failures and the weight of unfulfilled expectations. The children, once vibrant and hopeful, faced the harsh realities of their heritage, each struggling to carve out their identity amidst the facades maintained by their parents. The mansion, now a silent observer, seemed to absorb the palpable tension, thickening the air with its sorrow. Yet, even as the mansion crumbled under the weight of its own history, a flicker of hope remained within the family. Vivian, determined to break free from the constraints imposed upon her, began to explore her own passions, seeking solace in the arts. She found a mentor in an artist who frequented the mansion, and their clandestine meetings blossomed into a romance that ignited her spirit. Meanwhile, Thomas discovered a passion for writing, channeling his pain into stories that reflected the struggles of his family. While Eleanor, though still a child at heart, found refuge in her dreams of adventure far beyond the walls of their home. The mansion, both a sanctuary and a prison, held its breath as the fabric of the Kilgore family began to fray. The echoes of laughter and sorrow intertwined, setting the stage for what was to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the estate, the air thickened with anticipation. What awaited the Kilgore family, and would the mansion's secrets remain buried beneath the dust of time, or would they rise to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged? As night fell, the mansion stood resolute, its silhouette dark against the twilight sky, hinting at the tumultuous events that lay ahead. The stage was set for tragedy, and the whispers of the past beckoned, ready to unveil the dark secrets embedded within its walls. What was once a symbol of prosperity would soon become an embodiment of loss, and the shadows lurking in the corners of the mansion hinted at a reckoning that would change everything. In the heart of the grand mansion, whispers of an impending doom echoed through the hallways, intertwining with the shadows cast by flickering candlelight. The once majestic rooms, adorned with opulent furnishings and priceless artwork, now stood as solemn witnesses to a tragedy that would forever alter the course of the Whittaker legacy. It was here that the once vibrant laughter of soirees faded into a haunting silence, a silence pregnant with despair and unanswered questions. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when a scandal erupted within the family. Charles Whittaker, the patriarch and founder of the empire, had always been a man of focus, driven by a relentless ambition. But as the weight of his ambitions grew heavier, so did the burdens he carried. The pressures of maintaining his status, along with the expectations of his family, had begun to fray the edges of his carefully curated life. Rumors swirled like dark clouds overhead, hinting at betrayals and secrets that festered just beneath the surface. The turning point came one fateful evening, during a lavish gala meant to celebrate the success of Whittaker Enterprises. The mansion was a tapestry of elegance, draped in silk and gold, with chandeliers casting a warm glow over the illustrious guests. Laughter mingled with the strains of a string quartet, but beneath this facade of joy lay a tension so thick it felt palpable. It was a world where the elite showcased their wealth, but it was also a breeding ground for jealousy and resentment. As the guests reveled, a hush fell over the grand hall when news broke of a scandal involving Charles's youngest daughter, Eleanor. A letter, filled with incriminating details of a forbidden love affair, surfaced, stirring a tempest of gossip and outrage. The revelation sent shockwaves through the elite circles, fracturing the family's carefully crafted image. The affair was not just any indiscretion. It involved a man of lower social standing, a musician who had charmed his way into Eleanor's heart. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, and what followed was a cascade of accusations, blame, and ultimately tragedy. On the night the news broke, Eleanor, overwhelmed by the weight of shame and betrayal, vanished from the gala. Panic ensued as her absence became evident, and guests turned from indulgence to frantic searching. The mansion, once filled with laughter, now echoed with despair, its grand walls suffocated by the heavy air of dread. Charles, frantic and desperate, led the search through the sprawling estate, calling out for his daughter, his voice echoing against the cold marble floors. Hours turned to a long, agonizing night as the family combed through the expansive grounds. The gardens, once a symbol of beauty and grace, transformed into a labyrinth of despair. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale light over the mansion, the search yielded a horrifying discovery. Eleanor was found at the edge of the estate, lifeless and cold. The weight of her family's expectations and the cruelty of society having crushed her spirit. The impact of this tragedy was staggering. The Whittaker family, once the embodiment of power and prestige, found themselves in the throes of a scandal that rippled through the fabric of their existence. Charles, grappling with his own guilt and grief, became a shadow of the man he once was. The mansion, which had been a beacon of success, stood as a tomb of sorrow, its halls resonating with the echoes of Eleanor's laughter, now forever silenced. In the days that followed, the atmosphere within the estate grew thick with despair. The eyes of the world were upon them, scrutinizing every move, every reaction. Charles, desperate to protect what remained of his family's reputation, withdrew into himself, his ambition twisted into a desperate need to shield his empire from the fallout. The once bustling mansion became a ghost of its former self, filled with hushed conversations and tear-streaked faces. The scandal not only tarnished the Whittaker name, but also exposed the fragility of their existence. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, and the family members, once united by blood and ambition, began to fracture. Eleanor's death had laid bare the secrets that festered among them, revealing the deeper issues of jealousy, ambition, and power struggles. Each family member was now forced to confront their own demons, their paths diverging in the aftermath of grief. Charles's elder son, Henry, who had always been the expected heir, experienced a profound shift. With his sister's tragic fate weighing heavily on his heart, he struggled to reconcile his father's ambitions with the reality of their family's crumbling reputation. The mansion, once a symbol of achievement, now felt like a prison, its ornate walls closing in on him. His resentment grew as he watched his father's grief consume him, driving a wedge between them that could never be mended. Meanwhile, Eleanor's mother, Margaret, fell into a deep sorrow, cloistering herself away from the world. The vibrant woman who had once hosted extravagant gatherings was now a mere shadow, haunted by the loss of her daughter. The whispers of the mansion turned to murmurs of a curse as tales of grief and misfortune began to circulate. The family, once adored and envied, became subjects of pity, their name synonymous with tragedy. As days turned into weeks, the mansion began to decay, mirroring the disintegration of the Whittaker family. The laughter that used to fill its halls was replaced by the sound of creaking floorboards and the rustle of curtains swaying in the draft. Shadows clung to the corners, where once there had been light and life, now serving as reminders of the ghosts that lingered within the splendor. The opulent gardens, once meticulously maintained, began to grow wild, with weeds overtaking the rose bushes that had once flourished under the careful hands of gardeners. The legacy of the Whittaker family, tainted by grief and scandal, became an emblem of the fragility of wealth and power. The mansion, with its foreboding presence, stood as a monument to both ambition and despair, a reminder of the delicate line between success and tragedy. And as the years passed, the stories of Eleanor's demise and the ensuing chaos became woven into the very fabric of the estate, transforming it from a sanctuary of wealth into a haunted relic of a forgotten dynasty. The grand house, with its intricate spires piercing the sky, now cast an ominous shadow, haunting those who dared to remember the family that once lived within its walls. The mansion, once a vibrant hub of social activity, now stood in eerie silence, its grandeur fading into the shadows of neglect. Whispers of its past echoed through the dimly lit halls, where the laughter of children and the clinking of champagne glasses had long been replaced by the soft creaks of aged wood and the rustle of wind through broken windows. As twilight deepened, the mansion took on a life of its own, the moonlight casting ghostly silhouettes that danced upon the walls. The rich tapestry of its history remained intact, yet the somber air hinted at something far more sinister lurking beneath. Rumors of the Kilgore mansion being haunted by the spirits of its former inhabitants had circulated for decades. Despite its dilapidated state, curious visitors often reported strange occurrences. Some claimed to have seen fleeting shadows darting through the rooms, while others described the sensation of being watched, a heavy gaze following them as they navigated the once grand estate. The once inviting drawing room, with its elegant fireplace and ancestral portraits, seemed to throb with a palpable energy, as if the Kilgore family's essence still lingered, trapped within the confines of their home. Local legends spun tales of a hidden treasure buried somewhere within the mansion's expansive grounds, an inheritance tied to the Kilgore family's downfall, a mystery wrapped in layers of intrigue. Could the fortune that had once fueled their rise now be the very thing that haunted their legacy? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of deep purple and orange, the mansion stood like a sentinel, guarding its secrets, waiting for someone brave enough to unravel the truth. The origins of these whispered tales could be traced back to the tragic events that swept through the Kilgore family, events that transformed their story from one of prosperity to one of ruin. After Arthur Kilgore's death, the family struggled to maintain the empire he had built. The wealth that had once flowed abundantly began to dwindle under the weight of mismanagement and scandal. The mansion, once filled with the clamor of joyous gatherings, became a silent witness to the unraveling of familial bonds and the haunting echoes of lost dreams. As the years went by, the mansion passed through the hands of various owners, each one trying to breathe new life into its decaying structure, yet each effort seemed futile against the weight of its history. It became a canvas for graffiti artists, their colorful tags clashing violently against the faded elegance of the walls. But the ghosts of the past did not fade as easily. They clung to the mansion, entwined within its very foundation. In the late 1970s, a group of paranormal investigators decided to delve into the mansion's mysteries, armed with infrared cameras and electromagnetic field detectors. They spent nights within its crumbling walls, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. As they walked through the dimly lit corridors, the atmosphere grew dense with tension. The flickering lights cast distorted shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. The investigators reported strange phenomena, doors creaking open on their own, cold drafts that chilled the air despite the season, and even disembodied whispers that seemed to echo from the past. One particularly chilling encounter occurred in the grand staircase, where a lone investigator felt a sudden drop in temperature. As his breath formed a cloud of mist before him, he sensed a presence behind him, a gentle tugging at the hem of his jacket, as if an unseen child was trying to pull him away from the top of the stairs. His heart raced, and he turned to find nothing but shadows. The footage captured that night would later send chills down the spines of those who watched it, a fleeting glimpse of the enigmatic energy that still permeated the mansion. With each new owner, the mansion's history continued to unfold, and the tales of the Kilgores morphed into local legend. There were stories of strange accidents, unexplained disappearances, and even sightings of a woman in white who wandered the grounds, her expression one of eternal sorrow. Neighbors claimed she was the spirit of Catherine Kilgore, Arthur's youngest daughter, who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances during a family party. Rumors swirled that she had hidden away a portion of the family fortune, and her spirit remained bound to the mansion, seeking justice, or perhaps reconciliation, for the wrongs done to her. Yet, amidst the stories of hauntings and tragedies, the mansion carried a weight of beauty that could not be ignored. Its faded walls, adorned with peeling wallpaper and broken chandeliers, told a story of opulence long lost. Sunlight filtered through shattered windows, casting ethereal patterns on the dust-laden floors. The garden, once meticulously landscaped, had become a wild tangle of weeds and overgrown vines, but hints of its former glory still peeked through, a reminder of the life that once thrived within the estate. Despite its state of disrepair, the mansion remained a source of fascination for those drawn to its allure. Urban explorers, thrill-seekers, and even amateur historians ventured into its depths, hoping to catch a glimpse of the past, or perhaps encounter a spirit longing for release. Each visitor left behind a piece of themselves, a footprint on the legacy of the Kilgore family, entwined with the mansion's own story. As night fell, the mansion loomed even larger, its silhouette dark against the star-studded sky. The air grew thick with anticipation, a sense of something about to unfold. It was within this atmosphere of suspense that the secrets of the Kilgore mansion beckoned, urging those who dared to explore its shadows, promising revelations that might change everything they thought they knew. But would the truth bring closure, or would it unearth horrors better left buried? The mansion stood silent, waiting, as time marched forward, its mysteries waiting to be uncovered. The mansion stood shrouded in the weight of silence, its once vibrant corridors now filled with echoes of lost laughter and whispered secrets. Shadows danced along the walls, playing tricks on the mind as the flickering candlelight struggled against the encroaching darkness. The air was thick with the scent of dust and forgotten memories, a testament to the grandeur that once was. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that seemed to mourn the legacy of the Whitaker family, now fractured by betrayal. Eleanor Whitaker, the youngest daughter, had become the embodiment of the family's unraveling. The revelation of her scandalous affair had sent ripples through the elite circles of society, and the mansion, once a symbol of wealth and prestige, now stood as a monument to their disgrace. The ballroom, once filled with music and laughter, had transformed into a theater of shame. The elegant chandeliers that had once sparkled with light now hung like heavy chains, burdened by the weight of the family's secrets. In the days following the scandal, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The grand rooms that once buzzed with activity now lay silent, save for the occasional creaking floorboards that echoed through the empty halls. Charles Whitaker, the patriarch, was a man driven by ambition, but the intensity of the scrutiny turned inward. The proud figure who had commanded the room now wandered the mansion like a ghost, haunted by the shadows of his family's misfortunes. The whispers of the townsfolk grew louder, carried on the winds that swept through the estate. They spoke of Eleanor's folly, her rebellion against the expectations that had been placed upon her, and the man who had drawn her into the depths of scandal. A musician, they said, with charming eyes and a voice that could melt the coldest of hearts. But beneath the surface of this romance lay a deeper narrative, one of desperation and longing that had become entangled in the lives of the Whitakers. In the confines of her opulent room, Eleanor sat in silence, the weight of her choices pressing heavily upon her shoulders. The walls that had once provided her solace now felt like a prison, trapping her within the confines of her family's legacy. She gazed out of the window, her heart aching for the freedom that had slipped through her fingers. The verdant gardens, once her sanctuary, now seemed like a distant dream, a world beyond the reach of her family's expectations. Meanwhile, Charles, wrestling with his own demons, wandered through the mansion's forgotten corners, seeking answers that eluded him. His footsteps echoed through the corridors, a rhythmic reminder of the crumbling facade that had once defined his empire. He paused at a grand portrait of his ancestors, their proud faces gazing down at him, judging him in silence. They had built this legacy with blood, sweat, and tears, and now it felt as though their efforts were being undone by the very family they had fought to elevate. As the days passed, the Whitaker mansion became a stage for the family's unraveling drama. Dinner tables, once adorned with fine china and laughter, grew cold and barren. Conversations turned to hushed tones, whispers filled with barely concealed contempt. Charles's two eldest sons, William and Jonathan, each grappling with their own ambitions, found themselves at odds, their rivalry intensifying in the wake of the scandal. The tension in the air crackled like electricity, a reminder of the fractures in the family that had gone unnoticed until now. The once tight-knit family began to fracture, with Eleanor caught in the crossfire. While her brothers plotted their next moves, she became a scapegoat, the embodiment of familial disappointment. The love that had once bound them together now twisted into resentment and blame, as they each sought to deflect attention away from their own shortcomings. It was during one particularly stormy night that the mansion bore witness to a confrontation that would mark a turning point in the Whitaker legacy. The thunder rumbled like the growl of a beast awakened from slumber, and rain lashed against the windows as if the heavens themselves mourned the family's descent into chaos. Charles gathered his sons in the drawing room, the flickering fire casting a flickering glow on their strained faces. "Your sister has brought shame upon us all," he declared, his voice rising above the storm. "We cannot let this scandal define our family." William, the elder of the two, leaned forward, his expression a mixture of rage and determination. "Father, it is not just Eleanor's actions that threaten our name, but the way you handled it. You cannot shield us from the truth. She is a liability." Jonathan, ever the peacemaker, interjected. "What good does it do to fight amongst ourselves? We need to find a way to salvage our reputation, not tear each other apart." But Charles, consumed by a mix of anger and grief, could not see beyond the immediate crisis. The mansion quaked with the intensity of their emotions, each word a dagger thrown into the heart of their unity. As the storm raged outside, so too did the tempest within the walls of Whittaker Manor. The family that had once shared laughter and dreams now found themselves isolated in their own turmoil. Amid the chaos, Eleanor could only watch from her chamber, feeling like a ghost haunting her own life. She longed for reconciliation, but feared that the rift would never heal. The grand hall, once filled with love, now felt like a battlefield where the echoes of their past clashed violently with the reality of their present. In the days that followed, the whispers grew louder, enveloping the mansion like a thick fog. Friends turned into foes, allies became adversaries, and the world outside the grand estate began to close in on them. The mansion, once a sanctuary, transformed into a gilded cage, where freedom and hope seemed a distant memory. As the sun set on the horizon, casting long shadows across the estate, the Whittaker family teetered on the edge of collapse, unaware of the darker forces at play that would soon unravel everything they held dear. The mansion, once a husk of its former self, a relic slowly being consumed by nature and time. As ivy crawled up its once proud facade and weeds tangled around the cracked stone pathways, the Kilgore estate whispered of its past glory through the rustling leaves and the chirping of crickets. Yet it was the chilling undertones of despair that hung in the air, threading through the silence, waiting for those who dared to listen. The stories of hauntings continued to make their rounds in the nearby towns, and the mansion had become a destination for thrill-seekers and paranormal enthusiasts alike. With each visitor, the air thickened with anticipation, and the old walls seemed to breathe more deeply, drawing in the curiosity that invaded its forgotten corners. The shadows cast by the failing light danced wildly, creating an atmosphere ripe for imagination and fear. Many left with their hearts racing, recounting tales of cold drafts that chilled them to the bone, or of soft whispers that seemed to echo their own thoughts. Among these curious souls was Amelia, a young woman captivated by the legends that surrounded the mansion. She had heard stories from her grandmother, who had lived near the estate as a child. For years, her grandmother would recount the tales of the Kilgore family, their wealth, their power, and the sorrow that ultimately consumed them. Amelia was drawn to the mansion not just for its eerie reputation, but also for the unresolved mysteries that hung over the Kilgore name. With her camera in hand, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as she approached the mansion's imposing entrance. Pushing the heavy door open, she stepped inside, her breath hitching at the sight before her. The grand foyer opened up like an invitation into the past, with its towering ceilings adorned with cobwebs and faded chandeliers that hung like ghosts themselves. Dust motes floated in the dim light, swirling lazily as if reluctant to settle. The air was heavy, tinged with the scent of decay and memories. Amelia could almost hear the echoes of laughter and music that once filled these halls, but now all that remained was an unsettling quiet. As she wandered deeper into the house, she felt an inexplicable pull toward the drawing room. The walls were lined with portraits of the Kilgore family, their eyes seeming to follow her every move. Each frame told a story, But it was the unsettling gaze of Margaret Kilgore, the matriarch, that held her captive. Margaret had been renowned for her beauty and grace, but whispers of her despair and eventual madness surrounded her legacy. Amelia could not shake the feeling that Margaret was watching her, guarding secrets that had long ago festered in this place. Taking a seat on a faded velvet chair, she pulled out her notebook and began to jot down her thoughts. She documented the peeling paint, the shattered glass, and the remnants of a life once lived. Each detail was a thread woven into the tapestry of the mansion's history. As she wrote, the temperature in the room dropped, and a shiver trickled down her spine. Was it merely her imagination, or had the air turned dense with an unseen presence? With renewed resolve, Amelia stood up and explored further, her footsteps echoing through the desolate corridors. The mansion seemed to come alive with each creak of the floorboards, almost as if it were welcoming her into its depths. She moved cautiously through the dining room, where a grand table lay covered in dust, its chairs askew, as if the last dinner guests had fled in a hurry. The remnants of a lavish lifestyle remained, but the opulence was overshadowed by an aura of loss and betrayal. As she reached the kitchen, a sudden draft swept through the doorway, causing the hanging pots to clatter softly. Amelia paused, her heart racing. Had someone else entered with her? She turned to look, but the hallway remained empty, shadows stretching long and thin. The feeling of being watched returned, more intense than before. She shook her head, attributing it to her overactive imagination, but something stirred deep within her, urging her to keep going. Amelia stepped outside onto the sprawling grounds where nature had reclaimed the estate. The garden, once blooming with vibrant flowers, was now a tangle of thorns and tangled roots. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, and the world was painted in hues of gold and crimson, casting an ethereal glow across the landscape. Yet, as twilight approached, the atmosphere grew heavy with an unsettling energy. It was then that Amelia noticed a glimmer among the overgrown brush. Intrigued, she brushed aside the leaves to reveal what appeared to be a small, ornate box. Her heart raced as she knelt to examine it, its surface covered in intricate carvings resembling family crests. This could be the hidden treasure spoken of in local legends, the long-lost inheritance tied to the Kilgore family's tragic end. Just as she reached for the box, a sudden chill swept through the air, and a whisper, barely audible, seemed to call her name. "Amelia." The voice beckoned softly, sending shivers down her spine. She froze, her hand hovering just above the box, as dread coursed through her veins. "Who's there?" she called out, but only the wind answered. The atmosphere thickened, and the shadows deepened, shifting around her like living entities. Seconds felt like hours as she wrestled with the decision to either grasp the box or flee. The stories of the mansion's curse flooded her mind, and she hesitated. What if the family's treasure came with a price? The ground felt unsteady under her feet as she felt the pull of the box grow stronger, a strange connection lacing through her nerves. The whispers called again, more insistent now, wrapping around her heart. Driven by curiosity and fear, Amelia's fingers finally closed around the box. The moment she touched it, a surge of energy pulsed through her, and a sudden vision filled her mind. A flash of the Kilgore family's last moments of happiness, followed by chaos and despair. The weight of their tragedy settled into her soul, a warning mingled with an invitation to uncover the truth. She knew that she had stumbled upon something far greater than a mere relic. It was a key to unraveling the mysteries that had long haunted the Kilgore mansion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world into darkness, Amelia stood frozen, the box cradled in her hands. Would she dare to delve deeper into the legacy of the Kilgore family? The mansion loomed behind her, a silent guardian of its secrets, waiting for someone brave enough to unveil the shadows of its past. The answers lay just beyond the threshold of fear, and with her heart pounding, she knew she would have to face what came next. The wind continued to swirl outside the Whitaker mansion, a relentless reminder of the turmoil that had unfolded within its walls. As daylight faded into the shadows of evening, the grand estate stood as a haunting silhouette against the twilight sky, each spire and turret casting elongated shadows that intertwined like the stories of those who once inhabited it. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, broken only by the distant sound of rustling leaves and the creaking of the old wooden structure, a ghostly testament to the lives lived in opulence and the tragedies that had unraveled there. Eleanor Whitaker had always been the bright star of the Whitaker family, her laughter echoing through the halls, her youth a vibrant contrast to the faded grandeur of the mansion. But now, the very walls that had once embraced her felt suffocating, cloaked in the weight of betrayal and shame. The scandal that had rocked her family to its core had left an indelible mark on the mansion, transforming it into a mausoleum of sorts, echoing with whispers of what once was. As Eleanor roamed the once familiar corridors, she felt the oppressive silence close in around her, every creak and groan of the house amplifying her sense of isolation. In the grand parlor, where lavish parties had once been held and laughter had resounded, Eleanor found herself drawn to the dusty piano in the corner. Its keys, untouched for weeks, seemed to beckon her, a siren call from the past. With a trembling hand, she pressed down on a key, the note ringing out like a ghostly echo of the joy that had filled this space. As the sound faded, she felt a rush of memories flood back, dances under the twinkling chandeliers, the warmth of family, and the fleeting happiness that had been stolen from her. Outside, the town buzzed with the latest rumors. Eleanor's name was on the lips of every gossip, the whispers curling around corners and seeping into every conversation. The once revered Whitaker family was now the subject of scorn and ridicule, a cautionary tale of wealth, ambition, and the fragility of reputation. As Eleanor roamed the once familiar corridors, she felt the oppressive silence close in around her, every creak and groan of the house amplifying her sense of isolation. In the grand parlor, where lavish parties had once been held and laughter had resounded, Eleanor found herself drawn to the dusty piano in the corner. Its keys, untouched for weeks, seemed to beckon her, a siren call from the past. With a trembling hand, she pressed down on a key, the note ringing out like a ghostly echo of the joy that had filled this space. As the sound faded, she felt a rush of memories flood back. Dances under the twinkling chandeliers, the warmth of family, and the fleeting happiness that had been stolen from her. Outside, the town buzzed with the latest rumors. Eleanor's name was on the lips of every gossip, the whispers curling around corners and seeping into every conversation. The once revered Whitaker family was now the subject of scorn and ridicule, a cautionary tale of wealth, ambition, and the fragility of reputation. Eleanor had been the golden child, the envy of society, but in the wake of her scandal, she had become an outcast, a symbol of disgrace. People spoke of her affair in hushed tones, their eyes reflecting a mixture of intrigue and judgment, but none knew the depths of her pain, the complexities of her heart. In the dim light of the mansion, Eleanor felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her. She thought of the musician, the man who had captivated her soul and ignited a flame within her that had long been extinguished by the expectations of her family. Their love had bloomed in stolen moments, a spark of rebellion against the rigid confines of her life. But as the truth of their affair had come to light, that spark had turned to ash, leaving nothing but a bitter taste of regret. She had thought love could conquer all, but she had learned that love, too, could lead to ruin. As the days turned into weeks, the mansion's beauty began to fade along with the Whitaker family's fortunes. The once grand ballroom, now filled with dust, stood as a stark reminder of happier times. The chandeliers, once polished to perfection, were now dulled by neglect, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls like specters from the past. Eleanor wandered through the deserted rooms,
each one a reflection of her shattered dreams. The portraits of her ancestors gazed down at her with disapproval, their expressions frozen in time, their legacy tarnished by her choices. She could almost hear their voices echoing through the ages, pleading for her to restore the family's honor. Desperation gnawed at Eleanor's heart. She knew she had to find a way to reclaim her place in the world, to build a new life beyond the shadows of the mansion and the weight of her family's expectations. But how could she escape the chains of her past? Every door she opened seemed to lead back to the same haunting memories, of laughter turned to silence, of love transformed into shame. The walls of the mansion felt like prison bars, confining her to a fate she had not chosen. One stormy night, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, Eleanor made a decision. She would no longer be a prisoner of her past, nor a victim of the mansion's dark legacy. She would take control of her own narrative, rewriting the story that had been thrust upon her by society and family.
With a newfound resolve, she grabbed a pen and paper, the ink flowing like the storm outside as she poured her heart onto the page. Each word became an act of defiance, a declaration of her intention to liberate herself from the mansion's grasp. As the dawn broke over the horizon, casting a golden light through the dusty windows, Eleanor emerged from the shadows of her family's legacy. Her heart was still heavy with the burden of what had transpired, but she felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face it head-on. The mansion, with all its memories and ghosts, would always be a part of her, but it would no longer define her. As she stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the weight of the mansion seemed to lift, if only slightly. Eleanor took one last look at the grand estate, its once proud facade now worn and weathered. She felt a mixture of sorrow and relief, knowing that she was breaking free from the chains that had bound her. The mansion would endure, a silent witness to the stories of those who had come before her, but it was no longer her home. Instead, she would forge her own path, a journey of self-discovery and redemption that would carry her far beyond the confines of those shadowy halls. And as she walked away, the whispers of the past faded into the wind, leaving behind only the promise of a new beginning, a chance to reclaim her life from the ashes of scandal and shame. In that moment, Eleanor Whitaker chose to embrace the unknown, stepping forward into a future unwritten, a testament to resilience and the enduring spirit of a woman determined to rise above the darkness.